Kerry, an alcoholic.
Hi, Kerry.
Wow. I mean, seriously, I'm gonna take you everywhere. Because I think people like me better if I'm like around you. Because like the Kerry you're talking about, like I really want, like, dude, I so want to grow up to be just like her. All right. So my sobriety date is September 6, 1994. My husband is a way out big book study in Tannersville, Pennsylvania. And my sponsor's name is Mike, and again, I clarify, he's really old and there's nothing going on there. And he's probably going to hear this tape, call me up and be like, Kerry, why didn't you tell people I'm old? I'm only 64. That's old. So, anyway, I always like to open a talk like that because it's, for me, and again, this is my experience. I mean, again, I can't read the big book for you, and I can't work the steps for you. This is something you're going to have to do for yourself. My job is to encourage you. My job is to inspire you. My job is to give you hope. My job is to present to you what the end result of applying these principles in our daily life looks like. Now, mind you, this is what we got, so this is the example I'm going to give you. And, take it for what it is. When I tell you my story, you're going to go like, damn! Yeah, that is a lot of change. Trust me, I was feral. I bit people in all kinds of things. So, this is me grown up and very, very spiritual. But the idea here is this, is that I can't do this for you, and I don't want to, because I'd be depriving you of the privilege of developing a relationship with a higher power. I need to have a relationship with a higher power because I'm powerless. Lack of power is my dilemma. I have to find a power by which I can live, and it has to be a power greater than myself. Meaning it has to be a power that I truly believe will provide me with the ability to not pick up a drink. If I have a higher power that doesn't like me or I don't like it, then it's not a power by which I can live, and it's not a power greater than myself. So when I talk about this, when I use the word God, it's because I don't have a better word. I'm not Mickey. I don't have 101 anagrams. What are those called? Are those anagrams? What are they? Acronyms. Thank you. Thank you. Lots of higher education, and yeah, I can't spell, can't add, but I can quote Shakespeare. So the idea is I don't have a lot of that. I'm not spunky in that way. I don't have that gift. I have a gift of being really sarcastic and kind of gross and sometimes just a little perverted, but it gets your attention. A little bit, So the idea. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is this. Is that I'm going to tell you my story, I'm going to tell you about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. In the process of that, I'm going to talk to you a lot about how these steps work in my daily life. I talked a little bit about 10, 11, and 12, and it's really hard to take a chunk of the steps and just be like, I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to stick to this topic, and I'm not going to stray, and then you try to shove an incredible 20 years of experience of working these steps in 1 hour. And then I walk away going, well, I didn't talk about that, and I didn't talk about this, and I didn't talk about that, but I guess I talked about what God wanted me to talk about, and if I stopped getting in my own way, maybe, I'd actually, feel better when I'm done. But, consider you walk away and you go, what? There are so many things. I have so many nuggets, man. I have so many pearls, and then I got to remember something, that I'm not your higher power. That it's not my job to work the steps for you. It's my job to encourage you, to inspire you. And so that's what I hope to do tonight. So I'm going to tell you my story. Now, I've heard it as a good story. I don't know. I lived it. It kind of sucked for a while. It sucked less in the past couple decades. So, we're kind of good. And when I start to tell my story, and I start going through, what happened, and people are like, dude, she's still talking about high school. I'm like, dude, I'm almost done. I got sober at 18, to make this really clear. I'm 38 years old. I got sober at 18. And I hear this a lot. And it used to really piss me off. It was one of the resentments I had, one of the real or imagined ones, was that people would walk up to me and they'd be like, you're so lucky you got sober at 18. If I got sober at 18, you don't know what I would have done with my life. And I'm thinking, dude, I gave up the one coping skill I had. I gave up my religion. I gave up the thing I would crawl through broken glass to do. Because it sucked so bad, I had no other goddamn choice. I was having a good time. I would have really liked to have drunk for another good 20 years before I had to give it up. I'm just saying, if I could have drank alcoholically without massive consequences, being homeless, eating out of garbage cans, and 4-point restraint, I would have done that. Unfortunately, my experiences is I would eat out of garbage cans, I'm homeless, and 4-point restraints, and cops, and bad things, and suicide, and death, and all kinds of shit like that. So, unfortunately, I was not a very good alcoholic. I could only do it for a short period of time, and then I really had to stop. And it was a really good thing, too, because I was really, really dangerous to those around me. And I was. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm one of 5 children. I'm the youngest. I have to talk really fast, guys, and sometimes my brain is like 10 leaps ahead of my mouth. So, like, if I say something that just seems like it's backwards, that's probably because it is. Because I'm already on the next thing and my mouth is still catching up with me. It's just me. So I'm one of 5 kids. I'm the youngest. My parents are not alcoholic. They are wonderful, adorable, incredible people. My mom is a Eucharistic minister in the Catholic Church. My dad is an usher. I'm Irish Catholic. I grew up in North Jersey. Yeah. With a name like Kerry C, could I be anything else? So, my parents were adult children of alcoholics. And if anybody knows what that is, and that's essentially people who were raised by alcoholics. So it's kind of like being raised by wolves, but not being a wolf yourself. So you do wolfy stuff, but you don't get the wolves. So when you give birth to wolves and they start eating each other and, getting in fights and breaking things and stealing stuff, you go, what did I do wrong? So that's pretty much my parents' experience with their children. There's 5 of us. 4 of us have darkened the doors of Alcoholics and Narcotics Anonymous. 1 of us is still abstinent from drugs or alcohol. Hello, that's me. And my brother John, the jury's out. I don't really ask. He was a heroin addict. I'm not really sure what he does right now, but he seems to be okay, so I don't poke that bear. My brother Jimmy, he smokes crack on a tri-yearly basis. So he gets 4 or 5 months, and then he disappears for 3 weeks. He smokes crack, and then he comes back, and then he goes, I probably shouldn't do that again. And then he disappears for about a week. And we just kind of go, oh, Jimmy's smoking crack again. He'll come back eventually. And then I have my sister Franny. My sister Franny and I were very close. My sister Franny was she was my protector. And she was 10 years older than me. I am the youngest by a lot. My oldest sister was 16 years older than me. The youngest, or the second to last sibling, was 10 years older than me. So I was definitely the midlife. I was a total accident. In fact, my brother told me I was the tumor. And this is a true freaking story. You can't make this shit up. And I'm telling you, that's why my story's interesting. My mother has a history of ovarian and uterine cancer. In fact, she's had it a handful of times. Really, she's fighting it. She's a strong lady, and God bless her. But when she was 40 years old, the doctor told her that she had a big old tumor and that she was dying of cancer. And he went in to remove that tumor, and it turned out to be my head. They put me back. I said, Miss Cosgrove, you're not dying of cancer. You're pregnant with your 7th child. So, whenever my brother wanted to be really mean to me, he would call me the tumor. Hey, tumor, get over here. Yeah. So, they were out doing their thing, heroin, crack, meth, opiates, alcohol, breaking things, all kinds of stuff. And I'm like this little kid. So I was one of the people, I wanted to be an alcoholic and a drug addict. I looked at Jim Morrison and I thought, yes, dying in a bathtub is my idea of a good time. And if I could choke on my vomit, I would do that too. I'm all about it. I had no intention of being a normal human being. I kind of figured, I wasn't going to be anyway. I was already the tumor. I was a tumor. My brother, my family's like junkies and drunks. They beat the crap out of each other at every freaking christening. My parents are just clueless. So, I'm what chance do I have to be a normal human being? I'm not even going to try. I remember my first drinking. I was 3 damn years old. And I know exactly what I wore. It's the first memory I ever had. I know exactly what I wore. White tights, a green velvet jumper, a white shirt with a lace collar, the scallop collar, a little white bow in my hair, and black patent leather shoes. And they gave me Sambuca. And I had a spiritual experience. I remember I was almost 4 years old. And I remember that. I remember sitting at the table, and I remember them giving it to me in this little tiny thing, and I remember drinking it, and I remember the burn that it went down, and I remember thinking, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. I see why you people do this. I understand why you pass out your own vomit. This is making sense to me. And I know that, I remember that day. And it's like, you think about it, it's like, I can't remember crap from my childhood, mostly because it was really, really traumatic. But I remember what I wore the first time I put alcohol to my lips. Now, imagine that. Is it true that I remember that? I don't know. The salient fact is that memory is crystallized for me. And that says something about who I am. It says that alcohol did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And the minute I knew that was the minute I knew who I was. So I didn't bother. Like, by the time I was 9 years old, I was already stealing bottles. By the time I was 13 years old, I was in my first rehab. I didn't bother. Like, why bother? Like, seriously. So I drank, and I did what my brothers and sisters do. And I figured, they seem to be having fun. And so that's what I did. So here's the deal, though, is that I'm a real alcoholic. And I used to really freak me out, because when I was sober and in my home group, we had all these crazy big book hunters, and we had competitions that who could do the most intricate amends, who could write the most intricate inventories. I had this guy in my home group, he'd be like, dude, let's create a 37 area inventory. And he'd be like, let's give it to Kerry and see what she'd do with it. And it's like, does she go insane? Can she write it? And it was like, we would compete, and we would do this thing, we would be bigger, better, more, and all about just getting deep and getting that stuff that's blocking us, and just having that experience and that absolute abandonment. Like you gave me a bottle, you gave me a pill, you gave me anything, I would put it in my mouth without even thinking. I would stick it up my butt without even thinking about it. Right? But then you tell me to work the steps, or do an amends, or write inventory, I'm like, you got anything else? So, and that's the kind of girl that I've always been, because I am a real alcoholic. So when I put alcohol in my body, I can't control how much I drink once I start. And I have a mind that tells me that's perfectly normal. I have a mind that tells me I don't care. The biggest thing for me, it wasn't so much that I convinced myself it would be different. I knew exactly what it would be. I did not give a shit. I could not care about the consequences of my drinking. Because the pain that I was feeling at the time, that I was putting the bottle to my lips, knowing exactly what was going to happen, was greater than the potential consequences out there. That was a possibility. This is a present reality for me. So I drank for relief. And I always remember doing that. I don't remember a time when I didn't. I don't remember a time when I did not feel separated from you. I don't remember a time when I didn't feel terrified of you. Because I was terrified of what you would think of me. I was terrified about what I would think about me. I thought about what you were thinking about, what I thought about, what you were thinking about all the damn time. And my brain screamed at me. It was like strobe lights of, they're all going to laugh at you. You're crazy. You're crazy. Don't let them see who you are. And this went on in my head at all times. And I put a drink in my body, and I can have a normal conversation. I could look you in the eye. Before I got really, really, really drunk, passed out, and threw up on you. But in that time, between staggering around and my head screaming at me like a thousand monkeys, between that, it was real, real good. And that was what I was seeking, because I was seeking relief from a spiritual illness. And so for me, I knew what I was getting into. I knew who I was. I didn't have that level of that insanity was not what I had. And I'm not saying that I'm different than you guys or anything like that. I think that for some of us, we really truly believe it's going to be different. And other of us, we just say, yeah, it's going to be different, but deep down inside we know it's not. And the book talks about that. It says that deep down inside, underneath all this is going to be different, is the knowledge that it won't be. That, that it's a threadbare excuse. That underneath it, I know exactly what I'm doing. And the fact is I can't care. That is true powerlessness. True powerlessness is knowing exactly who you are and how bad it is, and not being able to do something about it. So I knew who I was. I was in and out of rehab. I had been in 9 rehabs. I'm actually a therapist now. I'm in working treatment, which is hilarious. Because my patients do stuff, and they're like, I'm badass because I stole sugar from the dining room. And I'm thinking, I crawled underneath the nurse's station into the bathroom, had sex with 2 separate people, then crawled back without anybody noticing. Yeah, you stole sugar. Good for you. That's actually a true story. It's pretty bad. Yeah, CDs for me. They were like Match.com. I met my husband while he was drunk in a meeting. He was 25, I was 17. I thought that was a great idea. He was shit-faced, and I was abusing benzos and saying that I was sober. Because this is Alcoholics Anonymous. That's non-conference approved. I don't have to talk about it. We got drunk together. Maybe got sober. But anyway, so that's the kind of girl that I was. So, when I'm telling this story, and say that this is Kerry's story. So, the funny stuff aside, so I grew up, like all of this stuff is going on in my house. And, much like Matt talked about, I had a lot of reasons that I used to say, this is why I am the way I am. For the women out there, and I know this always makes the guys uncomfortable. Too bad. There's too many of you, and there's not enough girls up here, so I'm going to make you uncomfortable, and you just have to live with it. Us women, we experience some pretty twisted things when we're drinking because, sometimes like we're unconscious and people do things to us that we really didn't know that they were doing. There are times when we'll compromise our dignity because we need a drink or a drug. We just do. There are times when we'll do things that, that in the light of day, make it so that we can't look at ourselves in the mirror. And there are times when just by virtue of being who we are, things happen to us that are pretty dangerous, pretty violent, and pretty terrible. So we come here, some of us, with a lot of damage and a lot of things that happen to us. And I'm not saying that's why we drank. I'm not saying that we should be special or you should go easy on us in the steps because don't you know how damaged I am. What I'm saying is that sometimes some of us have had some pretty significant things happen to us, traumas that were real. And then we come here and people, and you're saying to me, I'm going to have a better life and things are going to be okay. You just have to trust people. And I'm thinking, the last person I trusted, fed me benzos and booze and then raped me, while I was on a nod. Asking me to trust you is the hardest thing to do. Because my experience is that when I let people close to me, they hurt me. So my experience is that if people say they love you, they throw you downstairs. My experience is, as people say they love you, then they expect you to provide them with sexual services for drugs, and you don't have the right to say no. My experience is that if you do something wrong in a relationship, somebody might choke you until you can't breathe anymore. That was my experience. That was what people told me love was. That's what I saw in my family, and that's what I experienced in my relationship. I told you I dated in the psych ward. I'm not saying I have a great picker. I'm just saying my experience with other people kind of sucked. I had a terrible picker, and I had a lot of excuses for why I am the way I am. And I can tell you this, is that every single one of those things have been resolved to a greater degree. I'm not pristine. You're never going to be pristine. When you've been sexually assaulted, you're not going to walk away and be like, that never happened. That's awesome. No. You're going to carry that with you because you just will. It's part of who you are now. I can't take back the things that happened to me any more than you could. So that's something I'm just going to carry, and it's going to be a part of who Kerry is. And sometimes if you sneak up on me, I'm going to punch you in the face. Sorry. Kerry has PTSD. Whoopsie. That's just going to be the way it is. And I'm okay with that because I really believe that this is about self-acceptance and about loving the person that God created and not me telling God how he should fix me. Because that's when I tell God how he should fix me, that's me worrying about how I look to you and not being the vessel of God's love that I should be. And that's just the way it is. So, Kerry came here really broken, violent, carried knives. I had a green mohawk. I wore Doc Martens. I lived on the street. If anybody's ever seen the movie Kids, I actually partied with those kids. I was in rehab when they got discovered, or I would have been famous. But apparently, they just kept putting me in rehab. Funny, when we talk about it, we talk about the desperation of the alcoholic. We talk about what this is. I can remember being 16 years old and saying, I really don't want to drink anymore. Like, I just want to be a normal person. Like, I just want to, like, if I could just pretend to be a normal person, if I could just, like, convince you that maybe I'm just normal, then maybe I could just be okay. And I remember I was in this private Catholic school, because I'm also, like, wicked smart, which is crazy. So I'm wicked smart, but like kind of like in an absolutely no real world application way. So I'm like, I'm smart, but I can't parallel park my car. And if my husband wasn't like really, really handy and like knew where things were, like I would argue with the GPS and get lost with my GPS. I'd be like, what do you mean there was a turn? So I'm absolutely incapable of functioning in the real world. But for whatever reason, you put a book in front of me, you give me a bubble test, whatever it is, I'm really good at that. Like, I'm really good at processing information. So no matter how bad I got, I always seemed to do really well. Like, I would be in honors classes. I'd be in honors classes and, like, tripping balls and drunk and a mess, like, drinking vodka out of a Snapple bottle, throwing up in the bathroom. Like, this was Kerry. This is how I showed up in life. I was always with tremendous potential and completely, utterly disappointing you. And I'd be like, but Kerry, if you just harnessed your potential, can you imagine how you'd be? And I'd be like, yeah, tomorrow, man, tomorrow. So I said, well, maybe I can harness that potential, or at least I can fake it. They said in the meetings, fake it till you make it. So, well, maybe I should just start faking stuff. So I faked it. And I remained abstinent for about 6 weeks. I was walking home from my all-girls Catholic school, and someone walked up to me and said, hey, Kerry, you want to drink a 40 on the train tracks in the park? Sure. Sounds like a good idea. Now, mind you, I've been in a bunch of rehabs. I've already been a psych ward twice. I've had 3 suicide attempts. Tons of consequences. Tons of, Kerry really shouldn't be doing this. Plus the whole thing that I was trying to pretend that I was normal, and normal people don't do stuff like that, I guess. They should go to school instead of drinking on the train tracks in their Catholic school uniform. Or hitchhike back home from Dunkin' Donuts because I was too annihilated to actually make it into class. Like, normal people don't do things like that. And I drank. And I remember that feeling going like, I'm never going to escape this. I can't drink. I can't not drink. When I'm not drinking, I'm miserable. When I'm not drinking, I feel like I have no skin. I feel like I'm a raw nerve, and there's no end to me and you. I live in your head, and you live in mine. And I cannot, and absolutely, I can't breathe without terror. Like terror. And I mean terror, like that inner terror, like when you're just in knots, and you can just, your chest is heavy, and you just feel like you just can't get enough air. That is how I felt every moment that I didn't have alcohol in my body. You're a little restless and discontent, like in a level of like 12. That's just how I felt. So I can't not drink. I can't drink. I can't fake it. I can't put on a Catholic schoolgirl uniform and pretend to be a good girl. So I went home and ate the medicine cabinet, and I died for 2.5 minutes. My mom found me on the floor because my poor mother, how many of her kids she's actually found on the floor in the midst of some sort of suicide? 3 of us. Like, you'd think she'd start hiding the sharp objects, God bless that woman. So she found me, rushed me to the hospital, pumped stomach, in a coma for a couple days, whatever, another psych ward, another rehab. I actually got expelled from that school. I was in the psych ward, in the rehab, and in a coma. Now, this was in September that I did this. I got out of all of that by Thanksgiving, and I was expelled before Christmas. Because, again, this is Kerry. I burned down. The book talks about it. It says that we build up this wonderful future for ourselves, right? And then we burn it to the ground, right? If it was a matter of choice, if it was like, how can I drink successfully and get away with it longer? Like, I would have been smarter, but I'm incapable of doing that. I drink at the worst times. Because for me, I drink to kill that pain, to get that relief, and I can't not do that. And no matter how hard I try, I can just hold it into a certain point, and then I can't anymore. Because that's what it means to be an alcoholic. So this is Kerry. This is what Kerry's alcoholism looked like. We're on for another couple of years. One of the things when I tell the story, and the thing that I think is probably the most salient thing was, do you know I've been going to Alcoholics Anonymous since I was 13 years old? I've had a sum total, I believe, of 6 suicide attempts. I was dead twice, and I attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I made 90 dances in 90 days. I made coffee. I greeted people. I got a higher power. It was a cup. I talked about my problems. See, but here's the thing. I'm not going to talk talk about my problems, because my problems would then you know me, right? And if you know me, that's really, really bad. So instead, what I did was I watched a lot of daytime TV and a little bit of Beverly Hills 90210. And then I would go into meetings, these open discussion meetings, I like to call them, and then I would make stuff up. And I would just start sharing this craziness, like my brother, who was my uncle, and, he's having a love child with my cousin, and like just craziness. I mean, I'm thinking, there was no solution, no recovery, no steps, no God, no nothing in these meetings, but they did tolerate me. And considering that I was a complete drunken mess who lied and cried all over the place, I mean, you gotta give those people that, right? And I really was. I was the girl who got drunk in the bathroom at the young people's meeting, right? Yeah. And then stole the coffee money. Yeah. So, but I mean, when I tell the story and I think about it, it's like, I have been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous since I was 13 years old. I got sober at 18. I spent 5 years lying and crying and dying in Alcoholics Anonymous because no one bothered to tell me that there was a solution to my affliction. They told me to take a bubble bath. They told me to take care of my inner child. Look, I was a child. I don't have a goddamn inner child. I am a fucking child. I'm 14 years old. My inner child is a freaking newt at that point. They gave me positive affirmations. I hate positive affirmations. Because when you do a positive affirmation, all you do is stand in the mirror and realize that you're saying something that you absolutely don't believe is true. I am a good person. I am a good person. Meanwhile, you're thinking, well, if I really was a good person, I wouldn't have to stand in the mirror and tell myself that. They gave me what they could. But the problem is, and that's the truth, is that I'm a real alcoholic of the hopeless variety, and that you give me those little things and they work for a little bit, but they don't work. And they don't. And because the idea is, it's not about stopping; it's about staying stuck. I've stopped 100 times. I've stopped 1,000,000 times. I can't stay stuck without the power of God. I can't get the power of God by taking a bubble bath, eating chocolate, and giving myself positive affirmations. It doesn't work for me. I have to have a profound rearrangement of my psyche, a psychic change, a spiritual experience. I have to have an entire rearrangement of my value system. Because that's what when we talk about the spiritual experience, that's what it is. It's not the white light. I mean, I've had one of those too. I mean, I'm like one of the most blessed women of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've had white light experiences. I've had profound God experiences. I've had all of this stuff. I can name them. I can stand here for hours and tell you every wonderful nugget of spirituality that I have experienced in the past 20 years. And it is a lot, man. It's a lot. But here's the deal. The truth is that spiritual experience that we're talking about, that spiritual awakening, is about the rearrangement of my value systems, the things that guide me, the ideas and concepts that I cast aside to get a set of new ones. Because the truth is that my ideas and concepts were based in selfishness and self-centeredness. That those, and fear, obviously. So fear, selfishness, and self-centeredness was like my GPS. And it was broken. And it kept pointing me in this circle, the circle of the alcoholic insanity, right? And what I needed to do is I needed to have this spiritual experience. I needed to work these steps so that this GPS could be reprogrammed. Think about it. Remember when the new iPhone came out and Google Maps was really messed up and the Hoover Dam disappeared, right? But then all you had to do was plug your iPhone into the computer, right? And it would update it and it would fix all that. Think of it this way: is a spiritual experience is updating my Google Maps. And the stuff that's supposed to be there is there, and the stuff that's not supposed to be there goes away. So I was dying in Alcoholics Anonymous. So at some point I stopped drinking, and I didn't stop drinking because of me. I stopped drinking because God came down and touched me in a way that I didn't know that it happened at the time, and I didn't know what it was, but I know that I woke up, I was sleeping in a basement, I was eating garbage out of garbage cans. I was disgusting and filthy. I was 95 pounds. At one point, my older sister, Franny, I love her. She's awesome. She decided that I shouldn't breed because I was apparently a ragamuffin, filthy, street urchin. So she decided that I really shouldn't get pregnant. So she brought me to Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood was like, she doesn't need the pill. She needs food and maybe a detox. And this was like a Planned Parenthood in Newark, New Jersey. So this wasn't the Short Hills. We're talking We're talking about like Market Street, Newark, New Jersey. And those doctors were like, your sister probably needs food. She's not going to get pregnant because she's malnourished. So, I was malnourished and I was sick and I was suffering. And I woke up one day and I had this thought because my parents, I was completely disowned by my family. My mom went to Al-Anon, obviously, or I would have been in 100 rehabs. And at a certain point, if you have enough alcoholic, drug addict children, you get driven to Al-Anon real damn quick. So my mom went to Al-Anon. She started doing things like taking away my keys, locking me out of the house, saying you can't come home unless you go to rehab, all those things. So at a certain point, she just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. If you're gonna live like this, you can't come here. And I was not allowed in my mother's home. My mother's like this Irish Catholic, like feed you sort of woman. Like you never leave my mom's house without bags of groceries and her doing your laundry. She'll take shit off your back and be like, that shirt needs to be washed here. You know what? I'm gonna wash your clothes. You just sit there, rub your feet. Here's some cookies. That's my mom. So the woman who would literally disrobe you to do your laundry said I was not allowed home. I wasn't allowed in her home. And one day she was driving home from work, and she worked at Rutgers University, and I was in East Orange doing what I do, and I was on a street corner waiting for somebody to come down from a building with a bunch of stuff for me. And I'm standing there, and there's my mom. She's driving down the street, and I'm barefoot, and I'm, like I said, 90 pounds. I'm disgusting. My skin is broken out. I'm sallow. I smell. And she sees me. She looks directly in my eyes. She doesn't stop. She doesn't roll down her window. She drove on. Now, I didn't stop drinking after that, but a couple of weeks later, I woke up. I crawled out of somebody's basement, and I thought, I'm utterly alone. There's absolutely nothing in this world for me. No one wants me. I have nowhere to go. So when we talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, or when we talk about this solution as being the last house on the block, for me it really was. I literally had nowhere to go. The only people that would tolerate me were Alcoholics Anonymous. So I went to a meeting and stole a big book. And that's what I do. If I want it, I just take it. I did pay for it later. And I went to a couple other meetings, and I went to meetings, and I went to meetings, and I went to meetings. Somehow I got pregnant. I don't really know how that happened. I probably should have, listened to my sister. So I got pregnant, and then, so I'm 18, I'm pregnant, I'm newly sober, I'm stark raving crazy, no steps, no God, no nothing. And I'm doing and I decided I'm going to do some step work. So, I look at the picture in the big book, so I do a 3-column inventory. And then I decided I was going to take it to a priest. I took it to the priest to read it to him. And I read this 3-column inventory. He says, well, do you want to be absolved from this? And I said, no, I just wanted to tell you it. And I walked out. Yeah. So I'm dying in Alcoholics Anonymous. Dying. I'm not drinking, but I'm contemplating suicide just about every day. My daughter's my higher power, but it ain't doing it because there's no change there. I'm just staying clean because I'm pregnant, and then I'm staying clean because I'm breastfeeding, and I'm staying clean because I have a kid. I'm just not drinking, and I'm dying inside. And I'm so afraid. I can't look people in the eye. I have regressed to the point where, at least I was, semi-functional when I first came back into AA. And by the time I had been introduced to the big book, I was at a point where I couldn't look at people in the eye. I looked at your shoes. That's how I knew who you were. I went to candlelight meetings because I didn't want to see people. I didn't want people to see me. I was filled with self-centered shame. I was just filled with it. And I say self-centered shame because I was so busy thinking about all the terrible things that I did. I was so consumed with self. I was so lost in that I was just a cesspool of negativity. So my sponsor, who at the time was in her own cesspool of negativity, called me up and said, there's this guy. He's coming in from California, and he's about to go to India. And he's speaking at this meeting. And we were living in Staten Island at the time. We're like, let's go to this meeting and judge him. And at that time, my husband had been introduced to the steps, and he started doing stuff. He started doing inventory. He started growing. He started changing. And I really hated him because he was actually getting better and he was happy. And I was not going to ask him what the fuck he was doing. Hell no was I going to. I was never going to ask him. I would set myself on fire before I said, you know what, Adam? I kind of see that you're having some changes there, and what you doing? I would set myself on fire before I did that. So I go to this meeting to judge this guy. And this is what character defects. And God uses whatever he's got to use in order to get us to where we need to be. The outcomes in my life, who I am and how I got here, is absolutely none of my damn business. Because I showed up at that meeting with no desire to do anything but to hate on people who had what I didn't have. Because I was filled with envy and anger and resentment and just fear. And it came out of my pores. And he was talking about the 9 step, and he started saying things like, aw. What do you mean, aw? And so I raised my hand, and absolute sewage spews out of my mouth. I mean, I saying things, I'm frothing at the mouth. Don't you know what those people do? They don't need any amends. I will not make amends until I get amends. Don't you know I drink because of what they do to me? Crazy. And this guy, like, if Captain Kangaroo and David Crosby had sex and had a love child, this is who this man would be. I mean, he had like the handlebar, like the mustache, and like the turquoise rings, and David Crosby bald on top, and fringe hair, gut, and he looks at me with absolute love. And he's like, and just quietly, he's like, if I brought up something dark inside of you, he's like, maybe that's something we need to discuss after the meeting. You're not going to fight with me? You're not going to tell me I'm wrong? You're not going to engage in verbal warfare in this meeting with me? No. He's like, we'll talk to you. He's like, I'll talk to you about that later. He's like, just get me after the meeting. So he did something that nobody had done for me. And at this point, I was 20 years old, and I had been in Alcoholics Anonymous for 7 years. And he qualified me. Do you know I was in Alcoholics Anonymous 7 years before anybody qualified me to discover whether or not I was a damn alcoholic? I'd be raising my hand, Kerry, I'm an alcoholic. Kerry, I'm an alcoholic. Kerry, I'm a cross-addicted psychopath alcoholic. I didn't know what it meant to be a damn alcoholic. I thought being an alcoholic meant I got in trouble when I was drinking. Because don't you know, every time I drink, I break out in handcuffs. Every time I drink, I get a DUI. Because I didn't get a license until I was 22 years old. I just took the bus. If I counted those sorts of consequences, legals and this stuff, as being the reason why I'm an alcoholic, then I really wouldn't have been able to stay here. But he did something. He asked me what happens when I start drinking. He asked me what happens when I'm not drinking. He asked me whether I could stop on my own power. He asked me if I could stay stopped on my own power. He asked me these questions that I had never been asked. And then he gave me a big book. And then he told somebody, he said, this man's name is Tommy. He said, you're going to sponsor her. And somebody sat down for the first time in my life and explained to me who I was and why I was here. I had been here for 7 years. Somebody explained to me what the true nature of my disease was, the true nature of my malady. Explained to me why I felt so empty. Why I did the things that I do. And more than anything else, told me there was a way to be different. Because that's what I always wanted. I mean, I identified with this rebel, evil spawn thing. That's just how I saw myself. But deep down inside, I just wanted to be somebody who could love. I wanted to experience that, and I didn't know how. And I felt so broken, and I didn't know what to do about it. And this person sat down and talked to me about this. But what he did more than anything else is scare the living crap out of me. Because he taught me about what it truly means to be an alcoholic. And the idea is that I can't think my way through a drink. I can't negotiate my way through a drink. That the fact is that at some time, suddenly the thought that I can drink without impunity may come to me, and that I'm without a defense. That human power would do nothing to come between me and a bottle. And that scared the life out of me. Because here I am, I'm contemplating suicide. I'm literally calling family members and asking them, if I got into a car accident, would you take care of my child? This is where I am. And he's telling me, well, Karen, you know what? Here's the truth, is you got to follow some simple rules and take some suggestions and follow direction, and God's going to fix you. You have nothing to do with it except for to suit up and show up. And the result is none of your business. And that was freeing in so many ways, because me trying to figure out how to fix me was not working. You know, it was like asking a crazy person, you know, how to fix being crazy. I don't have to know I'm crazy first. And then I have no idea how to fix that. It's totally beyond my control because I'm so blocked by this selfishness, by this fear, by this sense of alienation from everyone and everything, that I'm incapable of letting anybody in to even have that communal experience. When I talked about 10 and 11, I said that 10, 11, and 12 are steps about broadening and deepening. I said it's also steps about community. It's about the coming together of my inner light and yours, about fellowship of the Spirit. This person sat down and told me what that meant, something I had been seeking my whole life. And it was sudden and it was profound. I went through the steps. I went through them so many times. I mean, I'm a step junkie. You give me a different way to do the steps, I'm all about doing it. I would drink toilet water if it would get me drunk. I had no problem with that. Seriously. If you told me that there would be some sort of interesting effect from it, I'd give it a shot. I might even shoot it. So then you tell me, oh, you know, pray on your knees. Hell no. That's beneath my dignity. I used to pee on the sidewalk. It's not as pleasant when girls do it, trust me. You know, but, you know, making amends, I'm not going to do that stuff. I might be humbled and somebody might know I was wrong. And like my sponsor was like, dude, Kerry, everybody knows you're wrong. The only person who didn't know you were wrong was you. And maybe if you actually started knocking on some of those doors and admitted to the stuff that people already know you did, they might actually like you better. You know. But, you know, and I'm telling you that, you know, like, we all talked about what these steps look like. I mean, the in-depth discussion of what this process looked like, I mean, was, I think, so thoroughly presented today. In such a way that, I mean, I'm on fire. I love coming to these things. I get to come here and listen to people that I listen to on my phone. I download stuff all the time on my phone. And I listen to speaker tapes. I'm a speaker tape junkie because, you know what? I can be on the treadmill and I can be listening to someone talk about God, and I could just get such an incredible height, such an incredible sense of unity. And it could be a tape that was made 10 years ago by somebody who's dead. And I get that sense that I know what he's talking about. I know what she's talking about. I've had that experience. And for me, that's an incredible thing. So I'm like, you know, absolutely. So I come here and I get to listen and meet the people that I've been listening to for years. This is awesome. It's a damn privilege. It's a privilege to represent Alcoholics Anonymous. It absolutely is. So, I told you what I was. I'll tell you just in a few minutes about who I've become. Told you what it was like, what happened, right? What it's like now. Okay? Fast forward, I was a high school dropout. I was expelled from 5 schools before I just stopped going because they kept kicking. I really had abandonment issues. I mean, like, seriously, when you get expelled from schools that your parents are actually paying for you to go to, you start really to develop this sense of, like, you know, I'm kind of not wanted. Like, they don't even want me. Like, I remember the first time I got expelled from the school that my parents were paying tuition, I remember looking at the nun going, but my parents paid for me to be here. I should be able to do whatever the hell I want. Entitlement was not a problem for me. So I developed this sense of, like, you know, abandonment, rejection. And what I had more than anything else was this absolute fear of failure. But I had this incredible amends story, and this has everything to do with who I've become. Okay, so I had this sponsor. Her name is Cass. She was actually a college professor, which is wicked awesome. Like, she's just this incredible woman. At a certain point, after like going through steps a handful of times, I finally found a woman who actually worked the steps out of the big book. In New Jersey, 20 years ago, that was like the rarest thing you could ever find. Like, the guys were bringing women through the work because there weren't women to do it. They didn't have the experience. So I happened to be in the first generation of these women who were having these experiences who actually stayed sober. So Cass was just a couple years ahead of me. She was upstate New York. So like, she came down and she was like, oh my God, this is like the worst AA I've ever seen in my life. What the hell are you people doing? And she found this home group called Spiritual Awakenings. And And she was presenting Big Book there. And I was actually I was doing a Big Book study out of my house, because at a certain point, like I left Staten Island and moved back to New Jersey. I'm doing a Big Book study out of my house. I'm creating that which I create, right? So my husband and I are doing a Big Book study. We're trying to like do this back to basics thing in this clubhouse, because like, you start doing the real Big Book and people start getting nervous, but at least if they can check things off the list, they feel a little better. So we're doing this back to basics thing in the clubhouse, and we're having dances. And we're doing this dance, and this girl, I overhear this girl, her name is Beth. And she's talking about the set-aside prayer. And I went, what? You know about set-aside prayer? How'd you learn about that? And she goes, oh, my sponsor Cass taught me. And I'm like, who is this woman, and how do I meet her? So she told me about this meeting, and I went there. I drove the hour. I drove an hour there, an hour back every Tuesday night for 3 years. And it was a privilege to go to that meeting. It was a meeting where I got to meet people who absolutely rocked my world. People who taught me things about God, taught me things about Alcoholics Anonymous, taught me things about spiritual growth, taught me things, modeled things, were examples of God's grace in ways that I can't possibly describe. It was a privilege. And I met this woman, and she was a college professor. And I'm a high school dropout who's pounding the Big Book, but secretly terribly afraid that you find out that I'm stupid. And I'm not going to do anything that's going to challenge that, because then you might find out who I am. So I had an agnosticism that I wasn't really willing to address. So I'm doing inventory with Cass, and this fear of being stupid comes up. And then we start talking, and she finds out that I'm woefully undereducated, because I actually have a 9th grade education at this point. Because I hadn't actually been promoted out of any other grade other than the 9th grade. And I stayed back in the 9th grade. And they finally just were like, get out of here. Get out of here. And the weirdest thing is I'm in gifted classes. They held me back and then let me still take the AP 10th grade classes, because they didn't know what to do with me. Because I'm brilliant, and I set things on fire. So I'm talking to Cass, and it turns out we were talking about like my educational history, and I started talking about like the fires I set and the things I did and property I broke and da da da. And we got to pay that money back, and we got to go back, and we got to make amends. We got to have that, gotta have that conversation. But see, I kind of felt like teachers, like quite frankly, if you were harassed and tortured by your students, like you kind of volunteered for that, because nobody in the right mind would do that without expecting to have some sort of disrespect, right? So I kind of felt like it was part of the course, and I didn't owe any of them an amends. Cass is an educator. She certainly fixed my wagon on that one. And the weirdest thing was the principal of the school that had expelled me twice was my older sister Maureen's, who's not an alcoholics, homeroom teacher. And the day that I was born, the day that I was not the tumor, and I was actually a baby, she came into school, and she went into her homeroom and said to Mr. Orsini, I have a little sister today, and I named her. My sister Maureen named me. She said her name is Terry. Now, my sister Maureen looks exactly like me, except for her boobs are smaller, but her nose is nicer. And she's about a ½ inch shorter than me. But, like, if you put the two of us together and, like, we're, like, 15 feet away, like, you really wouldn't know the difference. You'd think we were twins. Except for my sister's 52, because she's awesome like that. So she's 52, and she looks like me. I really hope I age like her. I really do. So she went in and told him this. So I'm in this school, and I'm setting things on fire. I'm beating the crap out of people. I'm smashing faces into desks. I'm getting drunk. I'm doing all kinds of things. I'm drawing penises on desks. I'm doing just bad things. And I'm constantly being sent to the principal's office. And I would go in, and Mr. Orsini would say, Miss Cosgrove. And I'm like, oh, shit, you're here today. Like, don't you ever take a day off? And he'd say, I remember the day you were born. Your sister Maureen, who's nothing like you, is the most beautiful, wonderful, smartest, most awesomest woman, most awesomest student I have ever met in my entire life. Why aren't you like your sister? You should be more like your sister. You look like her. Why don't you act like her? I don't know, Mr. Orsini, because I suck, because I'm broken. I don't know what. I'm sorry I'm not Maureen, and that's what I heard. You should be Maureen. So I'm telling Cass this resentment that I have at 5 years sober, because I'm good at holding on to things. and talking to her about this, and she said, you need to go back and make amends. I'm like, no way. No way. And then she asked me something really, really important. She said, you willing to put a bottle next to your big book and ask yourself which is easier, make this amends or die an alcoholic death? Every time I bought an amends, that's what my sponsor would say to me. Every time there was something, an piece of inventory I didn't want to write, every time I said, no, I don't want to go do that commitment, every time I said, no, I don't, I'm too tired, I'm too this, I'm too that, I would always hear my sponsor's voice in the back of my head, hey, Kerry, put a bottle next to your big book and ask yourself which is easier, die an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis. It was easier to make the amends. So I wrote this letter of amends, and I went in there, and I had this conversation with this man, and of course he starts off with, Kerry, how's your sister Maria? God damn it. I'm a grown up. I was like, she's divorced. Ha ha. Why so evil? So anyway, I had this conversation, and he asked me in this conversation, he said, well, what have you done about your education? And I looked at him and said, nothing. I don't even have a GED. So I asked the questions, and the 3 questions we're supposed to ask, which is there anything else I did to harm you? Is there anything you need to tell me about this? And what can I do to set this right? I asked him those questions. And you know what he tells me I need to do? Go to college. The one thing that I was most afraid of in the entire world. That insecurity, that agnosticism, that sense of shame, that sense of failure that I carried with me for 5 years in recovery. For 5 years. And he tells me that the only thing that I can do to set this right is to go to college. And I go home, and I call my sponsor, and she says, well, Kerry, she's like, short of them asking for sexual favors, you need to do it. By the way, if an amends, and somebody asks you for sexual favors, it's okay to say, let me talk to my sponsor, and I'll get back to you. Just say it. It's always okay to do that. Yeah. So, I went and called Cass, and she said, Kerry, you made a deal with God. What are you going to do? Die an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis? Got a GED. Okay. Enroll in community college. And I keep saying, well, I'll just take this one more class, and if I fail, then, I don't have to do this anymore. So I graduate community college with a 4.0 while raising 2 children and working full-time. And I get into a state school, a pretty decent state school, and I graduate from my state school with a 3.7 GPA while having 4 children and working full-time. I would have never known what was inside of me. I would have never known what I was capable of. I would never have known these things if my sponsor hadn't said, Kerry, are you willing to die an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis? What are you going to do? That this action that I'm asking you to take has everything to do with whether or not you're going to drink again. And I would never have known that. I had no idea who I was going to be. I just did this stuff because I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to be dead inside. That alcoholic death isn't about, and we talk about it today, it's not about dying or passing out or smashing my head or choking on my vomit. I mean, sure, it involves that. But I'm dead a long time before I actually choke on my vomit. I'll tell you that much. I'm dead inside. And for me, I came here and I did this stuff because I didn't want to be dead inside anymore. I wanted to be able to look you in the eye. I wanted to feel like I was a human being. I wanted to feel like a child of God. That's all I wanted. And what happened, who I became, first of all, I would have robbed me if I met me back in the day. And that probably would have beat the crap out of me, too. I had no idea that I'm like a soccer mom. I'm a therapist. I'm 9 credits short of my master's degree. I'm actually going to take the test for the highest certification in my profession in my state. I'm about to be really a grown up, in terms of my job, in all kinds of ways. Everything that I've been married for 20 years. My husband and I don't hate each other. In fact, he texted me just before we started and said, knock him dead, baby. This is the kind of life that I have. My children do 12-step calls. My children have actually 12-step their friends' parents. My mom, she kind of helps people like you. Here's her phone number. My daughter actually did that. No lie. This is my life. I had about what it meant to be an alcoholic. I talked all about what it meant to be powerless. I talked all about what it meant to be dead inside. And I get to stand here and say that that is not the truth for me today. That is not my reality. My reality is that I am filled with a sense of confidence, a sense of love, a sense of purpose that I can't possibly explain to you except for to tell you to get your damn own. That you don't have to be anxious. You don't have to be afraid. You can face the world today. There's a line in our big book that says that we are children of God. We are not servile or scraping. We do not crawl before anyone. We stand on our feet. That being a recovered alcoholic is about being a person who can look another person in the eye. I don't have to pretend that I suck because I don't fucking suck anymore. I don't. I don't have to tell you in false modesty about how not awesome I am, hoping that you will tell me how awesome I am because that's what I really want. I don't have to do that. I don't need you to validate my reality anymore because I trust my reality. Because I have a God consciousness. Because I have a vital sixth sense. I have a sense that is inside of me that cannot be removed by anything except for alcohol. And that's a beautiful thing. Because if I stay and I just do what I'm told to do, the virtue of following directions, I don't have to be brilliant. I don't have to be cheeky. I don't have to be awesome. I just have to listen to what my sponsor tells me to do. My sponsor doesn't tell me to do anything that's not in 164. He tells me that if I tell you to do something that's out of 164, you have every right to disagree and not do it. He's like, but if I tell you to do it in 164, I don't want to hear shit from you. And I don't want to hear I know, I want to hear okay. Because we said that, I know what I should do. Not okay. Because okay implies that I'm actually going to take some action. I know, that's an experience, that is an intellectual thing. Okay is about action. Okay is about submission. Okay is about serving God. So that's what my life is today. I get to serve God. I get to serve God in the coolest, most awesome ways. I get to do the coolest, most awesome things. And I get to actually like the person I am today. I don't want what you have. I want what I have. And it's not because I'm so awesome. It's because I actually get to feel as if I'm a part of something greater than myself. And because of that, and because I work and live in that consciousness, I want what I have. Because that's not for me to decide who I should be. I gave that up a long time ago. In my 7th step, I said, my creator. I didn't say I create myself. When you start this process, guys, or every time you come back to this, every time we come back to that first step, every time we come back to that question of, am I willing to do what it takes? Am I willing to pay the piper to be free? That spirituality is about subtraction, not about addition. I'm not adding things to my life. I'm letting things go. I'm letting attachments go. I'm letting beliefs go. I'm letting ideas go. I'm allowing God to remove from me the things that distract me from that experience that I need to have with Him. And if I can do that, if I'm willing to come back to that each time, the refinement and who we get to be and what happens to us and the healing that happens is incredible. So that chip on my shoulder, it's not there anymore. That hatred to the world is not there. That mistrust is not there. Shit, I came here from Kingdom Airport. I don't know nothing about Nebraska. Seriously, I'm like at the airport saying, okay, Max Mother can come pick me up right about now. You can dump me in the cornfield. Sure. Thank God she's not. But, this is about trust. This is about living in the world of the Spirit. This is about understanding and realizing that God has me. And I get to live like that today. And for me, that's a privilege. I want to thank you for allowing me to share my experience, strength, and hope with you. And I hope that I touched some of you. And if I didn't, I hope that somebody this weekend has or will. I know that I've been touched. I know that I've been inspired. And I can't wait to see what's going to unfold in the next day. Thank you.